What up, everybody? Welcome to Keeping It 9450, Codename WBB. I'm Daniel Artest. Got K-Dot in the building today. New background, K-Dot. What's going on, man? How you doing, brother?
Hey, yo, what up? What it is? What's popping? New background. We loving the vibes, the 9450. So, listen, I'm excited for this episode because this is, of course, not only our recaps for the Sweet 16 and Elite 8, but we got a whole lot of stuff to unpack when it comes to AU, when it comes to the NCAA tournament, man. I'm just excited to talk about it. And black is always beautiful when we rocking a new background, so you already know what it is.
Yeah, facts, man. Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, we're going to cover a little bit of AU. We're going to talk about the NCAA tournament. And K-Dot, we got to talk about a couple of players in the McDonalds All-American Game yesterday.
Absolutely.
Yeah, some players stood out to me, so I got a few. But, yeah, let's just get right into it real quick. So don't forget to follow us, too, man, at the 9450 on Twitter. Don't forget to follow us on YouTube as well, youtube.com/at the 9450. Please, our page is actually doing pretty good right now, so please, we need that support so we can get monetized and that we'll be able to travel and be in the building with y'all. All right, but yeah, let's start off with the AU discussion real quick. Now let's talk about Nalyssa Smith. She won the AU Unlimited Championship, Athletes Unlimited Championship, scoring 50 points, K-Dot, in the final game, man. Like, we got to talk about her dominance in this league. Like, she broke some rebounding records. She got the double record, and she got the most leaderboard points in a single game. So, like, what's your thoughts about Nalyssa Smith and Athletes Unlimited?
So from my perspective, first off, shouts out to Nalyssa Smith and her dominance in that last game, scoring the 50 piece. I think that from her involvement with AU is definitely going to me, is going to move further and ascend her into her WNBA career. But I think that everything that she did this year in AU, it proved to us the possibilities of what she could do, even when she was drafted to the Indiana Fever. I also think that with her versatility, with her expansion of her game, the way she can stretch the floor offensively and defensively, I think that from that perspective, it's helped her a lot within AU because she did a lot of things to break the points that she generated. And she was a captain for the most part of AU in those 5 weeks. And one thing that was interesting to me about Nalyssa Smith and AU is how evolved she has become as being like a floor leader. And I seen a few things from Nalyssa Smith that was like, oh wow, I didn't know she had that type of quality in her. When she was at Baylor, she was known for her versatility, her rim running, her block shots, her rebounding. Not too much, like she can score. We knew she could score, but from a role standpoint, we didn't really see that a lot at Baylor, but she was able to showcase that in AU. And obviously with the 50 bone, that proved a lot. And I think that she's definitely going to have that part of her game and into this 2023 WNBA season with the Indiana Fever. One thing that I've always told you about Nalyssa Smith is I think Nalyssa Smith's confidence is through the roof, right? But I also want Nalyssa Smith to understand that sometimes confidence can be weighted, right? And I want to see how that confidence come into the WNBA season, knowing that the Indiana Fever have that number 1 overall pick. I want to see a different type of leadership from her. I wouldn't call it a concern. Maybe it would have been after the whole AU thing. I think it would have been different if she didn't play AU from that perspective, but I think she has grown so much as a captain and understanding like the boundaries and understanding when to show emotion, when not to show emotion in certain situations. That has helped her a lot. And that's just, again, my opinion. I'll leave that up to the other court of public opinion to determine that. But Nalyssa Smith was just simply amazing for AU, and hopefully, again, that transcends into the WNBA season. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, my thoughts is from the games that I've seen with her in it, I'll admit I didn't watch a lot of AU this year. I just felt like it was like what we talked about with Lowe. I wanted to see the non-NBA players, the non-WNBA players get in more and do their thing. It wasn't like how it was last year, but watching Nalyssa Smith, you seen like when she plays free like that when she's not in a WNBA setting and she could just work on her skills. Like, you really see how much her game has blossomed since Baylor. She can step out to the three. She can take you off the dribble. She's going to post you up. She's going to give you everything, pretty much, mid-range and out. And you've seen, I think she averaged 22 and 13 on the short AU season. And I just think that going into her second year, like you said, that confidence is going to be everything. And also knowing that they got the #1 pick, and obviously you know that they're going to get Aaliyah Boston, even though I think that Indiana should really trade that pick and get like a more perimeter-oriented player to help pair with her and Queen Egbo. But we already know like Aaliyah, like defensively, is going to be so dominant. Aaliyah in a pro setting where she's not being triple teamed is going to be really dope. I don't really have an issue with it. We got to see them in person first to see how that pair works. Can they operate on opposite blocks? Are they good enough passers to play in a high-low situation? I think that Aaliyah could definitely do that. Is Aaliyah natural 5 or natural 4? Is Nalyssa Smith a natural 5 or natural 4? And then what does that mean for Queen Egbo? Because she's going to have to come off the bench now. And I really Queen Egbo's game. She really surprised a lot as a rookie. Really great defensively, really great rebounding, and just being an all-around great teammate. But I don't really see Nalyssa Smith going into her second year taking any steps back. I think that she's going to flourish, man. Like you said, that confidence is everything. And now that, like, you know how I say, the game slows down a lot from your first to your second year. So I'm really interested in seeing that. But there's another one, K-Dot, the defensive player of the year for Athletes Unlimited, Lexi Hall, who's also on the Indiana Fever. She was really good blocking shots, defending, hitting her shots. What's your thoughts on Lexi Hall? And just the same thing with Nalyssa Smith, how you think she's going to do going into year 2 of her WNBA season career?
So I think this was very important for Lexi Hall to participate in AU, because from a development standpoint, it gives you an idea of how other WNBA players operate and how other pro women athletes operate, not just WNBA players. I really do believe that Lexi Hall will have a pretty decent jump. I don't know if I would compare it to a Lexi Brown jump that we've seen last year with her AU debut and then moving into getting a decent contract with the Los Angeles Sparks. But I do think that Lexi Hall's confidence has expanded through the roof to me, because she was able to actually compete and actually be in a setting where she has to be a little bit more involved from a quote unquote coaching standpoint. What I mean by that is the way that AU has set up a lot of the way that they operate is everything is player driven. Everything is based off of what the player sees. And I think that Lexi Hall had opportunity to participate in that. And she was able to utilize the strengths that we seen her have at Stanford in a way that it expands to the program. I think that she's moving a lot faster on her feet, to be honest with you, just watching certain games. She was staying in front of people. I think that the confidence level from rookie year to moving into the second year is going to help improve that as well. I really do love how she was able to catch and shoot. I do love how she was able to put the ball on the floor and actually make plays. That's one of the most important things in professional basketball that you have to do. You can't just be a spot up shooter sometimes. The scouting report is going to make you put the ball on the floor. And I think from this setting, she was able to go that improvement. And I'm really proud to say that I think Lexi Hall will make a pretty significant jump after having the rookie year that she had. And we heard the for lack of better terms, the criticism of her going 6 overall last year and people believing that maybe that was too high for her. Now that she can have this season on her belt, she can prove coming into her sophomore year in the WNBA that that 6th pick choice was not a fluke. And hopefully we see that. Lexi Hall has done a tremendous job, and for her to be defensive player of the year, that's incredible. That's incredible. You're putting yourself in a position to show folks and scouts that, hey, I need to be a part of the scouting report now. So I think she has improved tremendously, and hopefully, again, that translate and transcends into the WNBA season this year?
Yeah, I think it does. And we've seen players that had a successful AU season, even though last year was their first year, they had a successful AU tenure and they carried it on to their WNBA season. Like Lexi Brown, for instance, fighting for a roster spot. She was in AU, she was doing the captain thing and got her a lot of confidence. And also, we seen how that translated. She became one of the best shooters in the league last year. So I think that Lexi Hall's case, I think that she's going to have a nice jump, like especially defensively. Coaches love to see you play defense, and that's what's going to keep you on the floor more when you play defense. So I know that the brain trust in Indianapolis was like very impressed with Lexi Hall's development, probably more so than Nalyssa Smith, because you already know what Nalyssa Smith is going to bring you. We already know that. But to see,
Absolutely.
the others, because the others is the ones that actually help you win championships. To see that,
Absolutely.
and then also what they got coming in the draft is going to be really interesting in Indianapolis. I cannot wait to see it, to see how everything pans out going into Lexi Hall's second year, and hopefully she get way more on court time than she got last year. K-Dot, man. Yeah.
Before we move forward, right? Before we move forward, I want to just expound on that just one second, because now we know that Tiff Mitch isn't there anymore. We know that Danielle Robinson isn't there anymore. She's going to get her opportunity, right? Along with Destiny Henderson and, of course, with the acquisition of Erica Wheeler. I truly believe that Lexi Hall is going to be their true 2/3. I think she's going to play a little bit of 3 when they go like that small ball, or even in big lineups. I think that she'll move up to the 3 position, and I think her and Erica Wheeler will probably interchange in small ball lineups. But her shooting ability and her defense, for sure, is definitely, to me, going to help the Indiana Fever. I looked at that Indiana Fever roster the other day, and I was like, hey, this roster don't look half bad, to be honest with you. And then, of course, when you have another AU player in Kelsey Mitchell, she's fully healthy, and she'll be able to at least show from a defensive and shooting standpoint what she can do, because now the quintessential prototype of a pro player, right, is 3-ball and defense. If anybody has a 3-and-D on their team, they're going to be pretty solid. So I think Lexi Hall will definitely fit into that mix of those 3-and-D players, like a Sophie Cunningham, a Lexi Brown, and those type of players. So hopefully she definitely gets that for coming this season.
Yeah, I agree, man. I agree. All right, let's move on and talk about the NCAA tournament real quick. Hey, listen, we're at the Final Four, but before we get there, we got to talk about like the Sweet 16, Elite 8, or whatever. I know we pressed for time, so we're not going to really stay on it too long, because definitely want to move on to the Final Four and dive into that. But yeah, K-Dot, man, Caitlin Clark, yo. Like, she's averaging, 30 points, about, 5, 6 rebounds, like 11 assists in the tournament, had the amazing 40-point, 10 rebound, 12 assist game to get to the Final Four versus Louisville. What was your thoughts about her performance? She's the only one in NCAA history, and that's men and women, to have that type of triple-double. Like, she's really getting into her bag. Now, we're not going to be like, oh, snap, she's the greatest offensive player in college basketball history. We ain't going to do all that. We ain't going to say she's the best player in the country. We ain't going to do that at all. But some things, like when it comes to basketball, and we talked about this on the phone, like you just cannot oversee. Like that game that she put on the show, and like we have to talk about it. So what's your thoughts on Caitlin Clark's performance?
Caitlin Clark is a phenomenal player. She's what I'm going to say this right now, and I don't know how this is going to come out to our enthusiasts and our purists and our gatekeepers of the game, but she is what the casual fan wants to see. And what I mean by that is the prototype of what a fan wants to see in a game is someone with confidence, someone who can shoot the rock out of the atmosphere, someone who can have decent playmaking abilities, someone who has like the quote unquote wow factor. And again, I am only mentioning this from a casual standpoint. This is not from a purist standpoint. This is not from a gatekeeper standpoint, because we know, because we're gatekeepers as well. and we're purists as well. We know that there are other players that from a impact, from a number standpoint, actually stands out more than what Caitlin Clark has stood out to be if you're not just looking at the stats. But I'm not going to ignore how good Caitlin Clark is. She is tremendous, and she does a lot for Iowa's team. Listen, in the tournament, she is responsible for 71% of Iowa's production. That means scoring or assisting on all of those points. 71% is a high percentage. And when you have a usage rate the way that she has, that's just stuff you can't ignore. And she's a volume type player, right? She has the green light to take all of the shots that she needs to take, as long as they're good shots, right? Sometimes you look at her shot chart and you say, oh, wow, she went 9 for 21 tonight. But that 9 for 21 from a scoring standpoint still was responsible for 85% of the offense that Iowa produced on that particular night. The same thing that happens in the tournament. She had a pretty productive game versus Colorado, and then she turns around and has this 40-point triple-double versus Louisville, and our recently promoted lieutenant, Haley Van Lith, as an opponent. And of course, that was definitely a must-see TV kind of like promotion thing. But Caitlin Clark, it's just simply amazing how she's able to play the game. I'm very impressed with what she has done in the tournament so far. And she has led her team along with Monica Cesano and Gabby Marshall and Warnock and the rest of that team and leading them to the Final Four. And you have to give credit where credit is due, because let's face it, last year they got bounced by Creighton in Iowa in their gym. And everybody was like, oh, what happened? We can't say that this year, because now they're in the Final Four and they're getting ready to face this game is going to be probably one of the most anticipated games. It is going to probably be one of the most watched games in NCAA women's basketball tournament history. So let's just get ready for it. I just wanted to say that Caitlin Clark is just simply amazing.
Yeah, she's really amazing. Even if you're a purist and a lover of the game like us, sometimes you got to take out the meat and potatoes out of it and just look at what's on the eye test, man. And like you just said it, she's producing over 70% of her offense, and she's going to have inefficient shooting nights, but she's still doing other things to get where her team got to go. And I don't think that shooting 9 for 21 is that bad. Think about it. You're really literally 1 or 2 shots off from shooting 50%. So it's not bad. Now, if she shot like, I would say 7 or 6 for 21, that's different. But she could shoot 9 for 21 or whatever. But I think on the season, though, she's shooting 48% as a high value
Right. Yes.
shooting 48%. That's incredible, because if that was like a post player, like if you give Cesano those type of shots, or the matter of fact, no, you give Aaliyah Boston those type of shots, she's going to shoot probably 60, 70%. Actually, Aaliyah Boston is actually shooting, I think last time I checked, 85% in the tournament, even though she's just chilling until you want to play a one-on-one, which I actually love that. We're going to get into that. But with Caitlin Clark, man, I think that if you're a purist, a hooper, a casual fan, I think that everybody appreciated that moment. And as far as the game between them and South Carolina, it will surpass as the most watched basketball game in women's basketball history. I actually said that it might actually surpass what Magic and Larry Bird did, Kate. I know.
Right.
Highest basketball game ever seen, ever on TV, ever, the 1979 championship game. I really think so. I think that with the social media era and everybody, how they could watch this game, whether on different apps or whatever, I think that this game is very dope. I can't wait till we really get into it, because I'm actually happy that finally we get to see a Black player like Aaliyah Boston get the love and adulation that she rightfully deserves as far as on the marquee. And it's going to be so dope with this game. All right, let's move on real quick, because like I said, we're not going to stick with everything alone. We're just going to talk about some stuff that stood out to us. Ohio State actually ending UConn's dominant run to the Sweet 16. What's next for UConn, Kate? Well, like, what's your thoughts? We know that, and everybody says it, that UConn is the standard when it comes to everything. I'm sorry, to those listening. Glad that UConn lost because give their fans a little bit of that humble apple pie real quick because them fans was going crazy, K. So I'm glad they lost. Let's quiet it down for a little bit, even though they really haven't quieted down. They try to blame everything else on everything on other games or whatever. But going forward, what's your thoughts on UConn? Do you really think they could really come back to prominence, or do you think it might be over for them for a couple more years?
So the first thing that they need to do is get healthy and stay healthy.
Yeah.
That's the very first thing that they need to do. I think that next year, UConn is going to be out for blood. It's cool to see tons of parity in the women's game after seeing years after years of dominance from UConn, right? At one point, they asked the question, is UConn bad for the game, right? But at this point, when you look at the dominance of what UConn has been able to do for years, you can't ignore the fact that, hey, the best players want to play for arguably one of the best coaches in college basketball, and that's Gino Auriemma. Again, arguably is not the best. I just think that from next year's standpoint, they will be better. They will be ready to play. Paige Beckers will be back. AZ Fudd will be fully healthy. Aaliyah Edwards will be back. The only people that are leaving from a draft standpoint is Lou Lopez-Seneschal and Dorka Juhas. Those are the only ones that are not coming back. We know this for a fact that they're not coming back. And with the roster that they have now, they are in position to actually run it back and actually get back to the prominence that you're questioning. And I think that with the talent that they have, it's not hard to, it's really, for me, it's a no-brainer that they will be back and they will be out for blood. I truly believe that UConn had a phenomenal season this year with all of the injuries and only having 7 players available at some points of the season. And actually having to postpone games throughout the season because of lack of players. I think that it's going to be great for them to get back into the mix next year. And I don't think that the prominence is dead. I just think that there are just more teams that are just as good. And one of those teams is South Carolina. I just truly believe that it gets to a point where we're back into the fold of there's UConn, there's Tennessee. Back in the day, that was prominence. You had UConn, you had Tennessee, you had Stanford at times. In my era, I would say North Carolina with Ivory Latta, they kept coming into the mix. LSU was something big with Money Moan and Sylvia Fowles. They always were in the mix. And I'm talking about my era. So this is in Baylor with Sophia Young and Brittany Griner. So I think that getting back to show, and how can I forget Notre Dame with the Muffet McGraw-led Notre Dame. But I just think that now the playing field, instead of dominance by one team, I truly believe there can be dominance by a plethora of teams. And then once they clash together, whether it's in the regular season or if they meet up with each other in the tournament, then you will see where the true dominance lie. And I still think South Carolina holds that crown. But I don't think UConn is quote unquote dead in the water from a dominant standpoint. I really think that they're still like the standard of excellence, especially with them being in the Big East. I think they can dominate that for the next, I don't know how many years, but I don't think that it's completely dead.
You know what, Kaden? I beg to differ. And before I beg to differ, you said Notre Dame. You know what? Shout out to Yukari Figs, K-Dot, and Ruth Riley. Let's shout outs to them. But nah, Paige Becker's had 2 devastating injuries, bro. I'm on a wait and see mode with her because 2 devastating lower body injuries is a lot. So how healthy will she be? I know she had a lot of time off, K-Dot, but that still means a lot. It's not like you're playing basketball. We see it all the time with athletes. We're seeing it with Klay Thompson this year right now, how he's struggling after two bad injuries. So I think that dominance will be there for UConn on a regular season level, but I think that until we see how Paige really is doing, I think that the jury should still be out on if they can really come back. I know they got some good players coming in as far as the All-Americans, but I really want to see how Paige does when she come back from this injury. Now, mind you, I just think like with AZ Fudd, man, healthy AZ Fudd, we see that. We know what they can do, but we want to see a healthy Paige. You want to see them at 100%. You want to see her 100%. And she might be 100% Kata, but as well, like it's like when you get an iPhone, right, for the first time, you know, the battery life is at 100%. Even though your battery's fully charged, but your battery life also be lower. You get what I'm saying? Like you go into the settings.
Optimization, right?
Yeah, you go into the settings, like that could be, the lifetime of your battery is 98%. Yeah, you may be 100% healthy, but are you the same, even though you're 100% healthy? If I can even put it in better layman's terms, boxing, you always leave out less than when you came in with. So Paige, now if you understand, everybody else that's understanding how I'm saying it, like Paige Beckers may be 100%, but is she still the same player? Is she still that same athlete? Laterally too as well, can she still move the same? That's what's going to be, that's the issue right there. But I also think that just covering women's basketball, you know how much we love women's basketball, just that they have so much high IQ. Like,
exactly.
So I think that she will still navigate it, but the game is still getting athletic at the same time with the high IQ. So not even saying that she's going to struggle. No, I'm not saying that. I just want to know if she's a half a step behind what she used to be, or if she's a full step or a full step and a half. That's the question. I could have just said it just like that. I had to go around and go give you out a trip in the scenic route, but whatever. But yeah.
No, I totally got the battery optimization analogy, because just like how, if anybody owns an iPhone, of course, your battery optimization, when you first get it, your battery optimization is at 100%. But then over time, the more apps you put in, the more you take pictures, the more you watch stuff on your iPhone, that battery optimization ends up dwindling.
Yeah,
and even though it's fully charged, even though it's fully charged, that battery optimization is probably, if you see 100% on that fully charged, that battery optimization is probably at 87%. I totally coming from. And that was a great analogy, by the way. That was a really good analogy.
I'm telling you, Kate, I'm one of the greatest wordsmiths ever, man. I got bars, man. Maybe we got to do the podcast rap intro, Kate. We're going to have to let everybody know about us as a duo when it comes to these bars. Nah, all right, cool. Let's move on to this Final Four real quick. We got to preview this, man. We got South Carolina versus Iowa, Virginia Tech versus LSU. We're just going to talk about the strengths and weaknesses of each team, key players to watch. And then we're going to predict the Final Four, actually. So let's talk about it. And we got to talk about Virginia Tech versus LSU first, Kata. We're going to save the best for last, honestly. And I'm looking at this battle right here is the battle of the bigs, Elizabeth Kitley versus Angel Reese. I like this battle pretty much because, listen, we know that Angel can score in that low post. We know that she can rebound, but so can Elizabeth. We've seen her 25 and 12 in her last game. And Angel, you know what? And everybody says that Angel struggled. No, she didn't. Actually, Kate, she didn't struggle. Just because you shot 3 for 15 on offense doesn't mean you struggled. She did the other stuff, Kate. 18 rebounds. I think she had 2 steals, 3 blocks. She did the other stuff. Sometimes that's what your bigs got to do. You know, sometimes your bigs is not going to be able to give you 30 and 14 or whatever. The other stuff that helps to win. And one thing I love about Angel Reese, man, it reminds me of me, Kate. I trash talk a lot to keep my confidence up. I make sure I put the onus on my back when I'm trash talking, no matter how brutal it is. I like that you get in the same Angel, whether she's shooting 12 for 15 or 3 for 15. You're getting the same Angel Reese. And I know that we both openly questioned the schedule. But one thing we never questioned was her game. Like we never really questioned her game. Never really questioned her game. The only thing we probably questioned was her motor against South Carolina, because she did struggle against them. Maybe that was overwhelming with how they was defending her. But other than that,
that's a true definition of struggle. That's a true definition of struggle.
That's a struggle right
South
there.
Carolina game.
Yeah.
That was a struggle.
That's a struggle.
Especially if you watch the game, that was a struggle.
Yeah. Yeah. But she's a great player, man. And man, the way that when she goes pro and how it's going to open up for her, man, she's going to be something different when she goes on that next level. So when people say that she had a bad game, no, she really did not have a bad game. And at the end of the day, at the NCAA tournament at this time, a win is a win. It doesn't matter whether you shoot 3 for 15, 15 for 15. What happened? Did she get the W? She got the W, and that's that. But the other matchup I want to see, K-Dot, Alexis Morris versus Georgia Moore. I haven't watched a lot of Virginia Tech basketball. I've seen Georgia Moore play. I just thought that she was a good shooting guard. Since the conference tournament, she scored over 20 points in the last 6 games. And she's dangerous when she got the ball. That quick release, she got an AZ foot level quick release. Have you seen it when she was dribbling around on top of the three and then let that shot go? Boom. I was like, okay, she's different. And what I liked about her too as well is that when she got hurt and she's limping up the court, oh my God, but she come back into the game, still play well. This game is going to be a good one. I really do. I just wish Ashley Wilson was playing in it, man. Man, I think that, like, what's your thoughts on Virginia Tech LSU, bro?
Yeah, so of course my matchup is the Alexis Morris, Georgia A. Moore
Mhm.
matchup because obviously you have two guards that are pretty much lead guards for their team. When you look at LSU and when you look at like the struggles that they have, the most consistent, if you will, that you would see from a scoring standpoint would be Alexis Morris. She has a she has a great mid-range jump shot. Um, she struggled a little bit beyond the arc in the tournament, and especially that last game versus Miami. I think they went for a combined like I think it was like like 1 for 30 almost. It was something ridiculous. But truly believe that Georgia Amore is one of those guards that is probably going to give LSU fits. I don't know who's going to start off on her because let's face it, LSU is a dangerous defensive team. They're really good defensively. They can keep you from shooting at three. The only team better than LSU in limiting 3-point takes is South Carolina. When you look at the matchup, it's going to be about how Virginia Tech is going to be able to sustain the first punch of LSU's defense. Is it going to be a low scoring game? Is it going to be a case where Virginia Tech tries to make it a trap meet and have LSU try to fit the bill as well? We don't know, but I know that from a standpoint, Virginia Tech shows a lot of promise defensively as well. Their numbers probably doesn't stick out to you compared to LSU's. But in this tournament, Virginia Tech has been pretty solid from a defensive standpoint, even though they allowed B to come back in that Sweet 16 game and then turned around and they really were on the ropes just for a little bit. I don't think they were on the ropes a lot against Ohio State. I do think that from a defensive standpoint, they have improved tremendously in the tournament. And that's going to be the biggest key. I really believe that it's the others that needs to step up. Taylor Soule, Virginia Tech, is going to be very pivotal in this game. I truly believe. And the next step for LSU is getting Flau'jae Johnson. I don't think I really think as a freshman and the reigning SEC Freshman of the Year, she really hasn't shown a lot in this tournament just yet. And maybe she's waiting for this Final Four matchup. We
Can I
don't
ask you a
know.
question? Can I ask you a
But
question?
yeah,
I'm sorry to cut you off. I don't really like cutting people off during the podcast, but I want to ask you a question. To get Flau'jae Johnson involved in the game, because I think that Flau'jae focuses too much on getting involved offensively, and then when the offensive is not clicking, her game just goes away. Would you like to keep her mentally locked in the game by throwing her on Georgia Moore?
I truly think that from a strategy standpoint, from a scouting standpoint, is going to have to start defensively. If I was Kim Mulkey, I don't know if I would start her. I don't know as a freshman, I would start her off on Georgia Amore because if Georgia Amore starts cooking, what happens to that confidence level? Now everybody says that their confidence is through the roof still, but hey, we've all played ball before. We know when somebody is cooking you, is it gets to your head at some point. So I don't know from a strategy standpoint if I would want to do that. Maybe what I would do offensively is see if I can get the ball in Flage's hands just a little bit, like from an off-ball standpoint. So I'm about to go X's and O's right quick. If there was a case where Flage Johnson was coming off of Iverson cuts, I think that using that Iverson cut, she can get the ball on the wing and end up utilizing her jumper or just being very aggressive and getting to the paint, getting fouled and getting to the free throw line. Because my thing is her jump shot right now isn't clicking. So if she gets aggressive and goes to the free throw line, she can start getting into a rhythm by shooting those free throws, and maybe that jumper would loosen her up a bit. All the free throw line would loosen her up a bit so that her jumper can start falling. I just think that from that standpoint, sometimes the offensive focus is too heavily focused on Angel Reese and Alexis Morris, because at times it gets to a point where you're under 10 seconds in the shot clock, and now Alexis Morris is just handling the rock and trying to get a mid-range jumper going when they don't have the capacity of getting the ball to Angel Reese. And we know what Angel Reese is going to do on the block. Angel Reese is going to take it. She's going to probably dribble left, probably on that right block. She'll probably dribble and give you that fake over the shoulder, come up and under, and try to foul in that situation. And I just think that's not solid. To me, it's not solid offense. And they've gotten away with it all tournament long, except for that Utah game, which again, I think that was one of those games where X's and O's was definitely pivotal. And again, I think they got away with it, but I don't think they will be able to get away with it with this particular game, because now it's for all the marbles. And I think Kenny Brooks is going to have a solid game plan. You just need to see what Kim Mulkey is going to do to counter that. We'll see what happens. I think that Flage Johnson is still going to be good defensively, but I think it's on the offensive end is where I need to see her shine in this particular game.
Yeah, yeah. And I think Kenny Brooks is probably listening to this podcast. Yeah, you probably just gave the game plan away on how to stop Angel Reese with her move. You ain't lie. You definitely ain't lie. But going back to Flage real quick, and I'm listening to you talk about her, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, yeah, there's a difference between the regular season and the conference play in the NCAA tournament, man. That game slows down. Like Flage plays on strictly at a fast pace, and that's why she's not really getting into her offensive bag that we normally see her do. But when she's in the open court, one of the best finishers in the land as a freshman in the open court. But you slow the game down, you take a lot from her. So going into year 2, next year, I want to see her work on her half-court stuff. I want to see her work on her half-court stuff. Maybe take more standstill threes and working out in her workouts so she don't have to play off that's be one-dimensional. But I think that's why she's struggling as well. And I think that, but also with her athleticism, sometimes you just got, listen, Kata, this is high-level Division I basketball. She's an All-American, okay? And I hear you about her at this moment in time going up against Georgia Amore. I'm like, listen, somebody got to be thrown in the fire. And I think that with Flage, though, I think that she can create offense based off of her defense. Just being in there, being in the passing lane, because I think that with Georgia Amore, they're going to always go back to her as bringing the ball back to the top. I think that she can get a couple of deflections and get mentally right in the game. I remember when I was struggling, or even if you had a game when you were struggling, sometimes you do some other stuff and imagine that getting a deflection is a point, or getting a rebound or a steal is a point or whatever, just being just right there. But you're right, though, like LSU needs more than Angel and Alexis to do things. So right, it will definitely be in a dogfight where they really shouldn't really be in. But also with Virginia, the veterans matter. Kata, we see it. The veterans matter, and at this level of the game, even on the men's side, you see we got Florida Atlantic in the Final Four or whatever. The veterans, they matter. The fifth-year players, the transfer portal players, they all matter at this time of the tournament too. But I believe in Flage, man. I think that she will definitely lock in and do what she got to do to help her team get the win. But let's move on, Kata, to the most hyped game in women's basketball history, all right? Let's move to the most hyped matchup, even though they're different positions. Aaliyah Boston versus Caitlin Clark. Oh, man, Kata, man. This is the game right here. This is the national championship, man. Like, this is the national championship, to be honest. Caitlin Clark, Aaliyah Boston. Oh, man, South Carolina versus Iowa, Kata. Like, This one's going to be a good one right here. We like these teams. We like their plays, and we love what Iowa have done after getting upset last year, bounced back, got to the Final Four, and now they got to go up against the gauntlet. They got to go up against the team with all the Infinity Stones in South Carolina, and that great, amazing defense that they have, and that post play in Aaliyah Boston that they have. I think that this game is going to be very interesting. And I'm looking at it from an Iowa standpoint. It depends on how they come out. I want to see finally, and we talked about this on an earlier podcast, that I want to see Caitlin Clark against Bria Bell so bad. I want to see like it's really good when you're going up against a defense, and also like how deep South Carolina is. Like we've seen it, and remember when I'm watching Maryland versus South Carolina, right? South Carolina falls down 21-15 at the end of the first quarter. You see how everybody was talking like it's the end of the world? No, it's not the end of the world. What you got to do is this: withstand that bench with your bench. And what South Carolina gets you at is that teams can't. So they got to have, their opponents always got to have players that play big, heavy minutes. And then they're getting tired. But South Carolina can keep it moving, can keep it going. So like that game is going to be an interesting game. I think this game is definitely the litmus test for Caitlin Clark, to be honest. I really do. I really do, because she's going to see a defense that she has never seen before. There's a bunch of guards that can guard her on that team, from a Bree Bill, from a Raven Johnson, from a Kiara Fletcher. They have the horses to contain her. So it's going to be up to the others how they're going to step up in this big moment too. I think that the Cezanne-Aaliyah Boston matchup is going to cancel itself out. I think that Iowa is probably not going to give Aaliyah the one-on-one love that Maryland did. I think that he's going to triple team her. And then on the other end, Aaliyah Boston is going to, I think that she's going to shut down Monica Cezanne. I'm sorry. Aaliyah's just too big, too strong. I know people in the community don't like those terms, but it's just let's just be honest. That's the facts, okay? It's just too big, too strong on defense. And then offensively, she's going to be too big, too strong on the offensive boards. We know the skill when she gets the ball, but you got to say that because they're not going to let Aaliyah Boston use the skills on offense, because they're going to have the whole arena, the whole Iowa fan base contingent that traveled to Dallas guarding Aaliyah Boston as well. So what's your thoughts on this matchup?
So this particular matchup is a very exciting matchup because now you're truly playing chess, right? This isn't checkers this time. This isn't checkers. You have to play chess. And what I'm looking for in Iowa first is, from a defensive standpoint, how are you going to guard South Carolina? Maryland did an incredible job guarding South Carolina one-on-one. I know that at the result that it came in, it wasn't the outcome that they wanted, but they did a tremendous job guarding them one-on-one. And it was hard to guard South Carolina one-on-one when your tallest player is 6'3" in Diamond Miller. So one thing that I am looking at from an Iowa standpoint is we're probably going to see a lot of zone. We're going to see a 3-2 matchup zone that's going to look like woman to woman. It's not going to be woman to woman, because what's going to happen is there's going to be a sag on the back line of that defense, because they still don't trust South Carolina in their outside shooting. The counter to that is, if you're open, shoot it. And Bree Beal has done a tremendous job being so confident in her shot in this tournament that I think that that's where Iowa gets burned if they go that 3-2 matchup zone. I can also see them running a 1-3-1 half court zone, where if Aaliyah Boston is on the block, the weak side person is going to double team, not immediately, but on the dribble. So whenever Aaliyah Boston makes her move to the basket, that's when they'll rotate for the double team. That's what I think is going to happen. I also think that from an offensive standpoint, if you're looking at South Carolina, let Caitlin Clark be Caitlin Clark. It's the others that you have to worry about. You do not want Caitlin Clark to be a playmaker. You want Caitlin Clark to be a volume shooter. And I think that's going to happen as well. And you mentioned it. There's going to be a plethora of players that are going to guard Caitlin Clark, starting off, in my opinion, with Bree Beal. Zaya Cook is going to get her chance. Raven Johnson is going to get her chance. Letitia Amihir is going to get her chance. Bree Hall is going to get her chance because she's improved tremendously in her lateral movements from a defensive standpoint. And she has improved incredibly in her confidence from a shooting standpoint. So I think that those type players are going to be focused heavily on Caitlin Clark. But again, it's the others. Mackenzie Warnock, she can shoot the rock. Gabby Marshall, she can shoot the rock. You have to stay home on those players. If Caitlin Clark drives, let her drive. You have Aaliyah Boston on one block. You have Victoria Saxon on the other block. You have Carmilla Cardosa coming off the bench on another block. You have Letitia Amihir, who's 6'4", coming off another block. Let her drive and get her shot block. Do not help. Do not help.
Yeah.
That's what it is. And I think that the game plan from a South Carolina standpoint is to continue to be South Carolina. Think that they have shown their cards mightily in how they can muck a game up and how they can finesse a game up. They have the full package. So I truly think that is going to be one of the greatest games played. I don't even care what the score is. I don't care if it's a blowout. It's still going to be one of the greatest games ever played. It's obviously one of the most anticipated games ever to be talked about because everybody's talking about it right now. Shoot, I don't even hear anybody talking about the men's tournament right now. Everybody's talking about the women's tournament and this Iowa-South Carolina matchup, to be honest with you. So
yeah,
it's going to be a great thing.
I agree. And because Louisville, Iowa was the most viewed ESPN game more than the NBA
this year. Yeah.
South Carolina and Iowa will surpass that. They will surpass that.
Sure.
But regarding Caitlin Clark too, you're right, K-Dot. This is what I would do. You know what, Caitlin? I know how to stop you. I'm going to let you score 55. But you're not going to get 10 assists. Do your thing.
You're not getting them 10 assists.
Everybody else, you do your thing. You want to go off? Go ahead. Go off. But you know what, though? At the same time, I would do that, and I believe in Brea Bill's defense, bro. She ain't letting it happen. You know, when you got somebody I think what they said she could squat in the gym like 300? She just like over double her weight? Nah. And you got somebody that can go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying you just make Caitlin Clark become a volume scorer.
Yeah, do your thing.
Just make her a volume. Yeah. Just make her a volume scorer.
Have at it. Hey, you want to be
again,
Cheryl Swoops record? Go ahead. Go for your 60. You can have 80. I guarantee you ain't gonna create for your teammate though. I tell you that much. Listen, we're gonna give you the Caitlin Clark hype train. That's what we're gonna do. 20 years from now, they're gonna know you at 80, but they also know that you went home. At the same
you lost.
Yeah, you went home. You went home. Definitely did. It's gonna be a fun game, man. Regardless, that's gonna be the game to see right there. It better live. I hope it's pretty close. But before we predict, K-Dot, breaking news. We're gonna break it. The Naismith basketball people, they announced the fan votes of the national for women's basketball. Player of the year, coach of the year, and defensive player of the year will be announced this afternoon. Kata, I think that this should be another podcast episode we got to record later when that stuff comes out like an emergency pod. But the fan vote winners are Terry Morin from Indiana for coach, and obviously Caitlin Clark for player of the year, which means that probably we're going to hear an announcement that Caitlin Clark has won player of the year for real this afternoon. And how dare you announce that before Final Four in front of the player that should be National Player of the Year in Aaliyah Boston. I'm not trying to compare it to the men's thing, but this is going to give me, Kate, I'm going to bring it back to 1995. David Robinson versus Hakeem Olajuwon vibes when they gave David Robinson the MVP award in front of Hakeem Olajuwon, and then Hakeem Olajuwon just went off on David Robinson. And listen, one thing I love about Aaliyah is that she's so quiet, she's so sweet, she's so humble, a beautiful person. But another thing that I love about her within that is the fire that burns inside of her. I'll tell you this, they better not give her that award at half court before they play. Don't do that, NCAA. Please, don't do that. You don't want
what's good for you.
You know what's good for you? Caitlin, you better take that award in your hotel room. I'll tell you that right now. You do that, I'm telling you. Listen,
Thought it was barbecue chicken before.
I feel like I'm a little Boston right now. Like the way the anger is burning inside of me just by thinking like, yo, you gonna really give this award in front of, okay, all right. You know how you go, okay, that's what you want to do? I watch. That's it. And whoa, man, listen, you don't want to do that, K-Dot. You don't want to do that. So it looks like Caitlin Clark is probably going to win Naismith Player of the Year. Ah, man, that's going to be crazy. You going to announce it on Final Four? You're going to do that after the show, man. I'm sorry. If I'm Caitlin Clark, if I'm Iowa, I'm like, listen, hold up, relax, calm down, stop, look, listen to your heart, and don't give me this award before I got to play this Final Four game. Because it's going to be on. And I'll tell you why. Aaliyah Boston, her team love her, man. They're going to fight for her. Absolutely. That's the only thing. She got the squad well behind that stuff. But yeah, before we got here, real quick, let's talk about the McDonald's All-American game real quick. We're not going to even like really go into it too much because I know we should request for time. Hannah Hidalgo scored 26 points, all-time game scoring record. Juju Watkins at 25. Pretty good game. What's your thoughts real quick on that?
Listen, I loved watching the game yesterday. Juju Watkins went off, and Hidalgo went off. My favorites, Jada Williams and Malaysia Fulwali. Those are my homies from back when they were in 7th grade, man. Been following them since then, and I'm so proud of them. But the entire game was so dope, and I think that it's a definite case where a lot of these freshmen that's coming in next year, man, we're gonna hear a lot of names, man. It's gonna be really good for the sport, really good for the game of basketball, period. And I just loved watching the future in front of us last night.
Yeah, definitely. When we do the award show recap, quick emergency, we probably dive in a little bit more because I'm hearing that Malaysia Fulwali is a generational talent. I never seen her play till yesterday. I've seen the skill set though, and how that meshes with Dawn Staley going forward. So we're gonna have to see that. We already know Juju Watkins as well, what she about. And Hannah Hidalgo going to Notre Dame. And you got Olivia Miles there. Is Hannah Hidalgo going to the 2? We don't know. But stay tuned though to our next episode when we cover that. But thank you for listening to Keep It at 9450 Codename WBB. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at the 9450. Follow K-Dot. Follow myself. That being said, Daniel Artez, K-Dot, Kevin Lewis in the building. Love is love. Peace.
Peace out.